Just survival of the species being threatened, I think then it's sort of justified. There's legitimate grounds for it. I think meat eating is something that we evolved into. I think we still continue to eat meat because we still stem from that evolutionary process where we're biologically we're used to it. Just like with our teeth, you can't go from liking meat and having it taste good and feeling pleasure from eating meat to not. It's all sort of veiled behind like the slaughterhouses where they don't show what's going on unless you go looking for it. So without that othering, if you sort of relate it to animals in that sort of personal, intimate way, you probably wouldn't. You realize that distance is sort of a fabrication; it doesn't really exist, and you'd be able to relate to animals a lot more. You don't need to eat meat. You don't need to cut down rainforests and kill, and just ruin the ecosystem.
This is why we need you to advocate with us, because you've got some great ideas. Hi everyone, this is Sheena, and today I'm here with Venk. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So we're here in Kensington Market, and I asked Venk if he wanted to sit down and talk about animals, and he was starting to tell me, that he's never had a pet, and that he thinks sometimes humans, because we have the power over animals, we sometimes abuse that power. Was that right?
Yeah, just like through our technology, like just guns and bombs and whatever. Like if you're like back in like the Stone Age, like a tiger or something would be a threat. Because like you just have like clubs or whatever, but now because you have advanced weaponry, you have like power, like not human power, but just like technological power over like just to like control and do whatever you want to them.
And what do you think about that? If humans have the power to do something over animals, should we do it?
Well, I think the first consideration is always like survival, like for the species. So say like just survival of the species being threatened, I think then it's sort of justified. There's legitimate grounds for it. But
and what would you consider to be survival of our species in terms of our treatment of animals?
Like say like I think in somewhere in the States, I think they have like sort of like certain populations of animals, like they're wild and they like sort of breed and they start to get out of control. So sometimes they put like bounties and quotas on that so that they don't encroach on like just like city limits and like just like per societal space and stuff. So like that's like sort of like a moderate example. Another one's like maybe an overgrown like in the fisheries or something, an alien species is introduced and it has no predator and it's eating up all like the local ecosystem and there's no check on it, then like that would be grounds for control. Whereas something like just like cutting down rainforests just to like for like corporate interests or just slaughterhouses and stuff just to produce just to consume, just for sustenance, just to eat. When there's other options, it's sort of like that stems. Those are symptoms of like a way of looking at animals that's sort of very sort of human centric, and so it doesn't relate. It creates a distance that enables that exploitation. Like you don't need to eat meat, you don't need to cut down rainforests and kill and just ruin the ecosystem and stuff. Whereas in other cases, like an alien species that's out of control or something else is like, that's like probably you're more justified in doing and like controlling or causing harm to the animals there.
I mean, I think you made some really great examples there. I think what you're talking about probably, especially in the case of America, and in some cases people even claim in Canada, where we have an overpopulation of certain species, you'd say maybe deer or something like that.
Horses or something in BC, right? I read a couple like a week ago or something. I think horses that are like they're trying to slaughter, and you're just finding like just like random like groups of horses just like dead on the ground because like they're just all over the place.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about like an overpopulation of species and that, I think it is kind of easy to think that humans are helping the situation by perhaps controlling the population. But a lot of times when you look into it, actually those overpopulations are usually caused by human activity in the first place, with humans taking the natural habitat of those species, or perhaps in the case of deer, using a very controlled environment. Some of the places where people go hunting, it's it's controlled by humans. They kind of help increase the population so they can get money for the hunting licenses, so people can hunt in those areas. If it's something to do with the fish or an invasive species, usually natural ecosystems don't turn themselves against each other. Usually a lot of it is because when you look back at it, it's because some sort of human action that has caused them to lose their habitat or mate breed in a way that they wouldn't naturally breed, things like that. And what you were saying about where it's not necessary, for instance, for slaughterhouses. So you don't think it's necessary for humans to eat animals?
I think meat eating is something that we evolved into because we've been sort of human beings for a long time, for like hundreds of thousands of years. So you didn't have the luxury of just like, if you're a quick cave dweller, then like an animal with a lot of meat and flesh is a lot more nutrient rich, and like the fat is more. It's you can survive on it for a lot longer than you would off like berries and like leaves or whatever. But
And how about now?
yeah, but now since we're like modern industrialized or whatever, and food and sustenance aren't really hard to come by because you have that stuff is programmed into society. Like you grow food in the farm, you bring it to the city, you sell it to the grocery store. It's all streamlined. I think we still continue to eat meat because we still stem from that evolutionary process where we're biologically we're used to it, just like with our teeth and just the way we digest, consume food or whatever. But so that was from before when like we were like not industrialized. But now, if you were to say, and then an othering of the animal, like deer or a cow or whatever, was fine because it was either you lead a more comfortable, proper sort of balanced life or not. Whereas now you have to. Whereas now, if you raised, if you had a closer relationship to animals, say on the farm, if you raised a pig or a cow or whatever, and you saw a distance between a human being and an animal like a cow or a pig is not as great as you're made to believe because you grew up in a city where you're not surrounded by such things, and it's all sort of veiled behind like a slaughterhouses where they don't show what's going on unless you go looking for it. So without that othering, if you sort of related to animals in that sort of personal, intimate way, you probably wouldn't. You realize that distance is sort of a fabrication; it doesn't really exist, and you'd be able to relate to animals a lot more. And I'd say most people, I wouldn't say some people just wouldn't care still, but if you had to, so if you did raise an animal and then you had and you were able to relate to it as something closer to you than what you previously thought, you would and you had a choice between not killing animals for food and just eating, like just being a vegetarian or a vegan or whatever, and slaughtering. If you saw what went on in slaughterhouses and what goes into the suffering of animals to produce meat, I think most people would probably not, because the conditions have changed. You're not hunting for survival anymore. Food is plentiful, and then it's not difficult to come by.
I'm going to stop you there because you made some excellent points. When it was a time of survival, and you're right, it was a very dense form of our caloric intake, and it means we could reserve our energy for other things. And like you said, most of us are not in that situation anymore. When we eat animals, it's more, would you say, out of taste, convenience, habit?
I think the percent of the population that would continue to not care are probably just like, they're just either partly because desensitized and also because it is the taste. That meat just tastes good because we've evolved to consume it, and it's something that in your brain there are certain chemical releases that assure you that it is a good thing to eat and it's good for your body, it's good for your survival. But that's only because we've industrialized such a rapid rate that we've industrialized in like a couple hundred years, whereas it changes in the brain and in the evolutionary sort of biology of your body, things don't change that fast. You can't go from liking meat and having it taste good and feeling pleasure from eating meat to not liking meat in a span of a couple hundred years. It'll take a lot longer than that. So it'd have to be a sort of cerebral sort of conviction that would have to stop you from eating meat. I think some people just, even if they saw what goes on in slaughterhouses, I think they just wouldn't care because it's not really a primary concern, and it feels good to eat meat.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't doubt that, for some of us, we feel like eating meat is a very natural thing for us, that it tastes good, it does different things to our bodies. It's hard for our bodies to suddenly go, like you said, from the time of the Industrial Revolution to suddenly just stop liking it because of health, environmental, or ethical reasons. But, there are other things that taste good and feel good, alcohol, drugs, sugar, that our bodies taste, it tastes good, it feels good, but doesn't mean that it's 100% natural for us to have. I definitely do think we ate meat in a time in our past. I think we were primarily, like you said, you mentioned before about our teeth, what our stomachs or perhaps intestines are designed to do, and they're definitely more designed to be omnivorous or more herbivorous animals. We have a long digestive tract, which is very indicative of a herbivorous or omnivorous animal. Our teeth are very blunt. We chew, the way that we chew in our back teeth are very blunt, indicative of a herbivorous or omnivorous animal for chewing vegetables, greens, tubers, roots, things like that.
Are these, for whatever these are called, the pointy ones?
Yeah, the canines.
They're for tearing, right?
Well, if you look at our canines compared to an actual carnivore's canines, very, very different. Yeah. And really a canine, some of the animals with the longest canines in the world, like a saber-toothed tiger. Many other animals have the biggest canines, but are herbivorous animals. So that's kind of not really a indicative sign of being, of our bodies needing meat. So, when you were talking about, how if most people would see what goes on in a slaughterhouse, they'd probably choose not to eat animals. How do you feel personally about violence towards animals?
Well, I think slaughterhouses is just the most extreme form of it.
Are there any industries where you pay for people to be violent towards animals? And by that I mean, do you consume meat, dairy, eggs, fish, ware, leather?
I used to be vegan, but in my present sort of situation, I stick to being vegetarian because sometimes it'd have like butter or like dairy or whatever, and it's like, what are you gonna do? Well, I personally started being vegan a couple years ago, and it worked out pretty well. So
why did you stop being vegan?
I'm out on the street right now, so the places where I get my food, it's sort of, I don't cook it, so it's like it's whatever they make, and then sometimes they usually have a vegetarian option, which isn't vegan, but it's still vegetarian. So it's just whatever. You can't be too picky out here. It's just it's about getting your daily bread first. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to do what you have to do, and it seems that you're very conscious of the issues, which is probably why you went vegan in the first place.
For me, it was actually I'm actually one of those people who really enjoyed eating meat while I was non-vegetarian. So I do really enjoy the taste. But the reason I crossed over because I tried it a couple of times over the years, but it's difficult to make sort of vegan food taste good for me. And then I sort of like, I just felt more and more compelled to like do it out of conscience. So I figured out a way to like make vegan food taste good. And then that's what finally enabled me to cross over, and that it, like the food I was making by myself, cooking vegan, it was good enough that I didn't really miss meat anymore. There were, at that point, there were like things like Beyond Meat and like meat like substitutes, like for I think bouillon. It's like the stock base you add to they made, I think it's called Better Than Bouillon or whatever the brand was. I forget now.
Yeah, I've got that. It's really good.
They make very like convincing like mock like chicken stock or beef base, and combined with like meat substitutes and like substitutes for fats like coconut oil instead of butter. It's like what you make ends up tasting really good, and that combined with the fact that you're not exploiting animals and you have that off your mind, it just feels, it was just all there for me to like make the switch, and it was just fine for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. People say, where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's an understanding of the ethical issues, there's a way.
There's like this zeitgeist that's like, it's a collective conscience that's like enables that. The fact that they make mock stock bases and Beyond Meat is because collectively like there's enough interest and like drive behind it that it's sort of these products are coming into being that make it possible for not only me but like anyone else who's interested. I think that's very important too, to raise like collective awareness of it, so that then businesses and markets will get behind it, so that the change can be, it's not just like you're just like yelling in like the middle of the field or whatever. It's like there's like collective movement, there's like things happening that enable and like feed off of each other.
And definitely that kind of movement, it has happened in the past. The vegan movement has been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, especially here in Toronto, there's things happening all the time. Companies are transitioning a lot of their products or a lot of their lines to also offer vegan alternatives because, they go where the money is.
Yeah.
And I know from many years ago, I've noticed such a big difference of the plant-based products that are available because the demand is there. So the movement kind of is very much happening. And I know it's hard. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through rough times right now. Yeah. It's really hard though when people are cooking for you and they're making food that's got butter or yogurt or something in it. But yeah, when you're cooking for yourself, there are so many options, especially, here in Toronto.
It's structured, the whole industry and process is structured in a way to make sure that people who buy the products don't know what goes on, because by and large, most people would be moved by it, and I'd say even a large percentage of them know what goes on and specifically don't want to address it because they're aware that they would be very conflicted to eat it. So I mean, it's difficult. Like you can't really force it on someone and say that you're being evil or cruel. But those are even ambiguous sort of judgments already. It's sort of, I feel like you need to somehow reduce the distance between what it means between a human being and an animal, which is considered like inferior or nothing, and like make it like you wouldn't kill and eat your dog here, at least, and then whereas in some places they would kill and eat dogs, and it's fine because it's just meat, just like anything else.
No difference really, would you say, between killing a chicken and killing a dog?
Yeah, or
right.
Or a cat. And then here you're here you don't do it because most people who have pets say if you eat meat and you have pets, and then it's that dichotomy where you love your pet and your dog and it's like one of the closest things in your life. And then you're just eating steak or whatever, and then if you can sort of have both of those in mind and function properly, it's sort of, it's more of that. I feel like the structure that distances cows and pigs and other things from you is like the culprit here, because you clearly love your dog, which is just an animal just like a cow, and then you don't feel the same things toward a cow, even though a cow is probably not too much different from a dog, or even a pig is probably closer to a dog and it's like intelligence and ability for companionship and like bonding or whatever. I think it's just it's all like it's all we made this stuff up, and then like we have the power to change it, because it's definitely not true that somehow cows are inferior and we can do whatever we want with them, and then
I must say, your empathy and your compassion is very refreshing. I don't often get to see this when I'm doing outreach. You seem like you really understand the issues going on. What you were talking about before, something called cognitive dissonance, where our actions aren't in line with our ethics. Most of us are animal lovers, but when we go and eat meat, dairy, eggs, and fish, where animals go to the aquariums and zoos, it's not really reflected in our actions.
Yeah.
And what you were talking before about there's no difference between a cow and a chicken and a pig, apart, we were conditioned to love some and eat others. Yeah. It's called speciesism, right? Considering one species more important than another by some arbitrary kind of reason. Yeah. And I know you said before, humans we have more of an ability to relate to humans because they're of our species. That's absolutely true, right? We are able to relate to humans, but all we need to understand is that other animals can feel pain and suffer.
Yeah.
And that's what most people need to understand. I think, I would love it if you would join us at some events. We have a lot of events here in Toronto. Okay. There's a huge animal rights activist and vegan community here in Toronto. Would you like to take some resources, some with some different...
Like I'm already I'm not practicing right now because I don't have the ability to, but I'm already there. Yeah. So
you're totally there.
I don't really need it per se because I'm already sort of vegan.
Yeah, the resources meaning how to join us at some of the events in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and speak up for animals.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'd be interested.
You would be amazing.
Okay. I haven't seen too many or paid attention to too many of these. Like I see them from time to time, these like whole like posters and stuff and like tablets that show like what goes on. But it's like people just keep walking by. Like what I was like just.
Some people do. A lot of people do stop.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
But what I was just came up with it. Not maybe there's better methods. But like you say, if you had those things, and you had like, and you brought along like a lamb, like a really cute lamb or whatever, or like a really cute piglet or like a calf, like with the demonstration that someone's handling, and it's just like you can play with it and like interact with it, and also at the same time say you had like you're giving away free food, like some like a dish of lentils that's like with
vegan bacon sandwich,
like or like with meat in it, that's like from like like Impossible meats or beyond meat or whatever.
This is why we need you to advocate with us, because you've got some great ideas.
Yeah, sure. I mean, whenever I can, I suppose.
Okay, cool. It was really nice to meet you.
You too.
Nice to meet you. Thanks. Okay.
Take care.